Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Fall in Love with Your Business Again podcast. I'm your host, Giovanna, and if you're tuning in for the first time, if you haven't met me before, I'm the founder of Bumper Leads. We are a marketing automation agency that helps 6- and 7-figure businesses simplify and automate their sales and marketing systems to save them time and money. And on this podcast, I just love to talk shop. Today, we are talking B2B sales. I haven't covered that in a while, and I think it's super important that we get on board because it is very important to have a good sales process. As a marketing automation agency, we specialize in helping you streamline that. So it's super awesome that I have an expert today that I'm talking to who is not afraid to share really good tips. And, this person really loves cold calling. It's a great tool for lead generation for a lot of her clients. And this is a bit of a longish episode. My guest name is Ashleigh, and she doesn't hold back. I particularly enjoyed hearing her advice on how often one should follow up with their leads. I normally give up at 2, but she has a very interesting advice. So let's tune in. Today, I'm really excited to have a special guest on the show who specializes in cold calling. Her name is Ashleigh Alsadie. And she's an accomplished speaker and an entrepreneur who runs 2 very successful sales-focused businesses. One's called the Promo Donna, which is really, I love the name. It's a lead generation firm that creates high-quality B2B sales leads and meetings through cold calling and pre-qualification for hundreds of companies throughout Australia. And you also have a website for coaching and training in sales under your name, ashleighalsadie.com. That's your personal website where you teach other businesses and brands on how to successfully sell themselves. You also support solopreneurs through the corporate organizations, helping them to fill their sales pipelines and grow their bottom lines. You have used NLP tactics, or you're, I think, experienced in the NLP. You're certified with the NLP, which is obviously helping with the cold calling side of things, and acting skills, which is really cool. It's something I was looking to do, acting before the pandemic last year. And I thought this is really great to learn how to get yourself in an uncomfortable situation, how to deal with some uncomfortable situations. So welcome, Ashleigh.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for the wonderful introduction.
Well, cold calling. Oh my God. Why do you love it so much? Why do you specialize in cold calling?
Wow. I mean, this is the big question that I'm always asked, right? Because yes, I am that rare and crazy person that loves doing all the sales grunt work that most people avoid or don't have time for. And some have a real passion in hating it, really avoiding it for that reason. So to answer your question, why do I love it? I'd probably have to tell the story of how I fell into it to kind of give you that insight. So basically, I studied public relations and marketing at university, which was very broad. There were so many different things I could get into. So when I graduated, I still didn't really feel like I'd found my niche. I hadn't found what I was, my driving passion in that area. And a friend of mine said, why don't you try corporate sales? You're great at what you do in terms of marketing, but you've also got the gift of the gab. You love people. And I said, well, yeah, why don't I try it? And I joined a very small sales firm that predominantly did a lot of face-to-face sales. So, they were going out and door knocking and doing the second half of the sales process. But my boss at the time, so when I joined, she said, look, we need more leads. We need more business. And I want you to help me to generate that. And I said, well, how do you want me to create these leads? And she pointed at the phone and said, start calling. And I still remember that first cold call so vividly. I always will, because, I was so nervous and I didn't know what to say. And, I was kind of fumbling through it. But quite quickly, I found, there were certain responses I would get regularly. There were certain ways I could build rapport. I started to develop a script that I could follow. And ultimately, I found that I was not only really good at it, but I really loved doing it. And this probably comes back to your first question, which was, why do you love it? I think it's that whole thrill of turning a no into a yes, and also the people side of it. The fact that I get to speak to people all day, I get to talk about a range of different businesses and services. But yeah, it's definitely that thrill of the chase. I'm very target driven, and
Wow. Yeah.
that's what drives me.
That's amazing. I do remember my first sales experience, and that was in the fitness industry. I used to be an aerobics instructor, and I used to work for a gym. So our
Yes.
sales, and I think I was 19 years old.
Yes.
I had my full-time job for 2 years after I finished high school, and I didn't know what to do. This is before I even enrolled into a university.
Yes.
So I learned sales from the business owner who ran the gym, and mainly walk-ins that were coming in.
Yes.
And for me, the face-to-face was really easy. It was comfortable. You could read people, you can tell. But then you had to do the follow-up after. So on the phone, and I would just get really anxious, really, really anxious, sometimes sweaty. I would have to make sure I go outside, get some fresh air. That was really, really hard for me. It took a while to feel comfortable to pick up the actual phone and speak to someone you've actually met. It's not like you haven't met them, but you're saying you're comfortable doing this with a complete stranger.
But I love that you've raised this, by the way, because for listeners, there's a lot of people that will hear cold calling and go, I still don't want to do that. That's not what I'll ever do for my business. And I say, well, yes, that's a decision everyone kind of has to make, whether it's going to be suitable for their business or not. But what you raised there was that the phone is still so integral for everybody in business, whether you're in business, the business owner, you're a salesperson. I mean, I believe everyone's a salesperson essentially, but you're right that if you learn the art of using the phone and using it really well, you can then follow up with people effectively. You can nurture client relationships. There's so many things that you can do through the power of the phone. So I believe it's one of the most integral pieces or tools of business today.
No, I agree with that. And it's just, it's another channel. And
Yes.
As a business owner, if you want to be in business, you have to be good at sales.
Yes.
And there's so many versions of sales. And I think we kind of grow up thinking I'm just thinking from the 80s or 90s days, you see the boiler room type of setting.
Yes.
People are like just very cutthroat type of sales, but it doesn't have to be that way, does it? You have your own special techniques that you use.
Definitely. Yeah. And this is another great topic because I think you're right. The fear around sales, even around cold calling, I think a lot of it comes from that fear of being seen as, the used car salesman or, the dodgy insurance guy, that old sales stereotype. But sales, I should say, has really changed dramatically over the years. So I believe, as you raised, back in the 80s, all those boiler room type settings, it was really focused on features and benefits, really plugging your business and how great you are. And a tip I would give to listeners now is if you're someone listening that goes, well, I need to sell, but I don't have confidence, you need to keep in mind that sales now is really all about the what's in it for them, for your prospects. So rather than picking up the phone and just spruiking who you are and what you do and, why you're fantastic.
Listen to me.
Exactly. Me. It's all about me. It should actually be you. It's all about you. So you've got to ultimately pick up the phone, or when you're in a face-to-face sales situation, focus on, well, how am I going to help you? Paint a picture of these are the kind of clients that we work with. This is the challenges they've faced, and this is how we help them. That's how you're going to be able to sell. And also, what's great about that process is you won't come across as salesy, because if you genuinely just focus on, well, how can I help this person? They're going to think, oh, this is a more authentic approach. This is someone who wants to help me in my business. So it'll go a long way in getting you better results.
It's so similar to I used to give feedback to people's websites, and when you see the copywriting, which is the text on the site, it's usually about we, us, 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 us. And I often say, do you want to we on your customers? Not we on your customers, because it's not about you, it's about them.
Yes, I love that. And I actually looked at someone's new website only yesterday, a friend of mine, and she was fantastic in doing exactly that, which was how I'm going to help you to, grow your business, how I'm going to help you to do whatever it is, make you more profitable. And again, I think that's the shift that a lot of people have to make in sales is even if you're developing a script, it's not, oh, we are this fantastic company that, does this, this, and this. It should be more, I understand that you might be going through this, and this is how we might be able to help. So, yeah.
Well, what type of clients, what type of businesses still need this kind of cold calling as a very important channel to grow their business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I'm going to be pretty biased and say, well, I think a lot of businesses, need this. And also I will point out, I'll use the opportunity to point out that, because I'd mentioned earlier that I think the phone is still a really powerful tool. But one thing I'll also highlight is I think because of the times, because the current climate we're in with, lockdowns and the world being very virtual, let's face it. The phone, again, has become even more powerful because people are craving that human-to-human contact. So just like you highlighted earlier, if you have leads that you're generating online, let's say through Facebook marketing or, LinkedIn marketing or SEO, something like that, you still need to pick up the phone and qualify them out and, nurture those relationships. So again, when it comes to cold calling, I'm a big believer that most companies can utilize it. But to answer your question specifically, when it comes to the Promo Donna as a firm, so my lead generation company, we really play a lot in the B2B space. And I find that we work really well for service-based industries. And this is probably because we're not just your average telemarketing firm. And I pride us on that because, let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? That there are a lot of people that go, oh, well, telemarketing or cold calling doesn't work because, they're just those people that sound like robots and they read a script and, it might be offshored. That was something I wanted to create a really different experience with. So I created, and this was 10 years ago now, I wanted to create a local team that really focused on quality over quantity, where we had a team of highly professional salespeople that could talk, complex service offers and things like that. So that's why we tend to attract, B2B service-based industries like IT, HR, branding and design. And we really focus on quality, high quality appointments rather than churning and burning through numbers, so to speak.
Much more outbound type of sales, is it? What about inbound sales? Do you guys specialize in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So look, I think these days, and I described that current climate a little bit earlier, where there are a lot of companies now who are obviously using online means to generate leads, which is fantastic. I think having a holistic approach of creating that inbound flow is so integral for your business. And so because of the growth in that space, because a lot of companies are now generating more leads through that means, that's where we kind of step in to assist. So we've got a lot of clients that now say, well, Ash, you're great at talking to people over the phone, you and your team. We still are nervous about picking it up, even though we know these are interested prospects, because you do get that fear of the phone again. So they'd rather outsource it to someone else who can qualify them out, kind of further nurture them, make sure they're a legit opportunity, and then we set them up as appointments. So that's kind of how we step into the inbound role.
And you mentioned that you also do some training as well with business owners. What are some of the typical things that you help them with?
Look, there's so many different things, isn't it, when it comes to selling? I mentioned earlier that, there is this fear around sales for a lot of people. So, one of the key topics that I cover, or I should say is like a foundation topic for a lot of people, is actually all around mindset. So, I believe that sales is one of the biggest mindset games out there. It's probably another reason why I love it. I love playing the mindset game, because the fact is, if you can't master your mindset, and what I mean by that is, having a positive outlook, a positive state, believing that you're going to achieve the results that you want, you won't achieve them. It's as simple as that. So a lot of people, I work with them to create a better environment for them to call in, work on their mindset with goal setting, with visualization, even some of my NLP techniques. So you talked earlier about neuro-linguistics programming, which I'm a master NLP coach, but you were correct in saying it really was a practice that I took on board really just for the sales coaching and training, because NLP is very powerful when it comes to rapport building techniques. And this is another side of the mindset thing is, if you can instantaneously build rapport with someone, and that can all be done through reading someone, understanding their buying strategies and things like that, that can take your selling to the next level. So definitely work with people on, mindset, rapport building. But then there's some really simple ones like, how do you create a great elevator pitch? Some people will say, well, I just don't know how to introduce my business or what we do. How to make a really compelling pitch. How do I close? This is something that a lot of people struggle with. Once I actually get a deal and I've got the interest, I don't know how to get them to sign on the dotted line. So that's another thing that I can specialize in. So a whole range of subjects. It really just depends on the person, where they're at in their sales journey and what they're struggling with.
Yeah, it sounds like, it's a mindset game. Like we said, it's a game. You can make it a bit fun as well. So it's really, to get really good at sales, you have to build this, I call it the confidence muscle.
Yes.
And then you really need to have a good sales process in place, because if you're going to be talking to these leads, working really hard, getting the courage to pick up the phone and speak to someone, it needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a goal, objective. What do you want? What if they say no? What if they say yes? What if they say maybe? Do you help with that type of planning as well?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love that you've highlighted the importance of a sales process, because yes, 100%. This is probably another tip that I would give people. So aside from, focusing on not being salesy and making it all about, the prospect, and I also mentioned, mastering your mindset, that's kind of the foundation of sales. But the next step is creating a great sales process. So you're spot on that this is probably, after I've done that first topic of mindset with people, the next is let's look at your sales process. And when it comes to a sales process, it usually for me, what it means is knowing what to say and when to say it. Because I believe there definitely is a step-by-step process that, I know I use every time I pick up the phone and I'm in front of someone, that works every time. And, I can even point it out for people that it's usually, preparation, and that's, preparation all about your mindset, understanding your products and services in relation to what your prospect wants and needs. The first step after you've done the prep is then having a great elevator pitch. So I brought that up earlier, having that really compelling introductory spiel, essentially. Next for that is key questioning, because my belief is that if you are a salesperson, the biggest part of your role is actually just to ask great questions. And it's funny because most people think the opposite is true. They think, I need to bombard people with all this information and then they'll buy from me. That's not actually true. If you want to make it about them, you have to just introduce yourself and then ask great questions, because they'll ultimately tell you what they need and, how you can help them. So asking lots of great questions. Objection handling would be the next part of the sales process, because, objections are inevitable, but there are ways to overcome it. And then last but not least, it's the sales close. So, if you've done a great process up until then, you should come to the close quite naturally, but otherwise there are some techniques you can use to close them effectively as well.
It's so important, isn't it, to have a plan to close?
Yes.
And sometimes, depending on the business, like you said, you're working the B2B services, the sales process might be very long for some.
Yes.
We have to be really clear. If you're going to invest all that time and money and energy into converting this prospect, then you have to be ready for it. And nowadays, I think back in the 90s or early 2000s, they used to say it's like three touch points or something like 7 touch points to convert the lead. Now it's like 12 or even more touch points.
Yes, I think, those stats are amazing now. Like I actually love looking at sales stats like that, in terms of even how many calls does it make to reach a decision maker, things like that have increased.
How many calls does it take?
My gosh. Well, I think the last time I checked it was about 8. And that shouldn't dishearten people though. I sometimes kind of get hesitant in saying that, because people are like, 8 calls, like I'm never calling anyone again. But, the thing I would say is, firstly, again, if you think about that, if it's taking longer to reach people, that means your competitors are probably giving up. They're like, oh, well, I'm not going to call then. There's no point. So you're going to be a step ahead of your competition if you persist and keep calling. The other thing is, just to keep in mind that we're very busy these days. People have meetings and Zoom sessions and, whatever they're doing. So the fact that people don't get back to you, it doesn't mean they're not interested. And so I say intuitively keep following up, leave a voicemail, then maybe send a follow-up email, keep in touch with them on LinkedIn, whatever it might be. But definitely persist and know that the more calls you make, you will definitely reach the decision makers eventually.
Yes. So you have the statistics behind you to support the goal, the ultimate win.
Yes, that's right.
I remember, I think I have to say that I don't really do 8 follow-ups or 8 reminders. So in my sales process, and maybe some competitors might be listening to this. I know they're following me. They're in the databases. But, I feel like I've spoken to someone, I've invested my time. I send a proposal. Well, it's not really a proposal. I don't really like to do proposals because they take a lot of time.
Yes.
Unless they're really an interested prospect,
yes.
Something that I've qualified really well. But then, the reminder side, I would say I would probably do 2 follow-ups maximum. I don't think I would persist to 8. It sounds like a lot.
Do you know, this is again a really great topic you've brought up, because I was actually coaching someone yesterday. I was doing a coaching session. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching sessions, and she's been struggling to get through to someone after she sent a proposal. So this might be great for listeners, because some listeners will say, well, that's me. I sent with this particular scenario, my coaching client, she sent a proposal through to someone. They seemed really interested. And then she heard crickets. She said, well, what happened? And the question was, how many times do I keep following up before I give up? And I said to her, would you really want my answer? And she said, why? And I said, because I never stop following up. And she said, what? Like, don't you get a hint after ringing a couple of times? And I said, no, well, let's go back to the point I made earlier, which is just because someone doesn't return your call doesn't mean they're not interested. And that's always been my belief, because there are always things happening on the other side of the phone or the other side of the computer that you perhaps have no control over. And I actually gave her an example of a time this happened to me, where there was a woman I met with. She gave me all the buying signals. She said, send me a proposal. I sent her the proposal, and then it went quiet. And I did what I normally do, which is I persisted. I followed up. And again, I gave that tip earlier to do it intuitively. Don't bombard them. But I stayed in touch over, it was probably, like a 6-month period where I was calling, maybe, once every fortnight. If they weren't there, I'd leave a message. Then I'd maybe send a follow-up email, just those different touch points. What happened was after about 6 months, that prospect called me out of the blue and said, Ash, we want to get started. And she said, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. It was just that we had a lot going on in the business. There were other stakeholders that, wanted me to do other things, but now we're ready. And I really believe that if I didn't stay in touch, she wouldn't have converted because, we wouldn't have been at the forefront of her mind. So, yeah, I would say to everyone listening, if you sent those proposals out, just stay in touch because you never know when the timing is going to be right. And you want to stay front of mind.
Yes, that's so true. It's so typical in our industry, in the digital marketing industry, that we and my peers have seen. They invest. It's a lot of time and effort to invest into putting together a good proposal, especially if you are doing, let's say, social media services, website design, graphic design. Even lead generation with Facebook, paid advertising type of lead generations, you still have to do some kind of assessment, some preliminary work that you have to invest in talking with this particular prospect. You have to do some work outside, thinking, researching, building, analyzing, and then proving to them, well, this is the benefit, this is the return on investment if you invest $40,000, $50,000 or whatever that is.
Yes.
So that's a lot of time spent. And oftentimes in our industry, the number one, pain for digital marketing is that you don't hear anything back. And so a lot of them get frustrated. And I remember speaking to my coach, and they said the best thing to do is not to sell the big solution, but to sell something small.
Yes.
So, he calls it foot in the door. Just get your foot in the door.
Yes.
Is that what you would advise as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, definitely if that's going to be your in. But even as you were talking, one thing that is like another hot little tip for people, because I do get feedback, just as you said, where they've created this big proposal and they send it off and they don't hear anything. One really simple thing that people overlook a lot of the time, and when I mention it, they go, oh my gosh, it's like a light bulb moment. Seems so simple, but they don't do it, is to get a committed date and time for the follow-up. So when I do a proposal, for example, I'll put it together and at the bottom of the email, I will say, John, I would love to follow up with you next Thursday at 10 o'clock to talk through the proposal. I'll send you a calendar invite, to lock that in. But if you need to change, just let me know. The reason this is really powerful is, number one, you're obviously locking it in the diary. So you've got the commitment. You're not going to chase your tail when you try to follow up the proposal and you don't hear anything. The second great thing about it is John knows that he has to read the proposal before the meeting, because if we've got the meeting scheduled and it's going to be about the proposal, he's going to want to go through that detail. You get a stronger sense of commitment. And that's a great tip, because if you get commitment from the prospect in that sense, it's probably a higher chance they're going to commit to you with the other things that you're delivering. So that would be one tip. But, I do love that idea about getting your foot in the door. So, if you do have like a client that you want to sell like a big ticket product or service to, yes, it can be sometimes good to sell in something a little smaller. I mean, that's why a lot of people, for example, do like online programs. They might first sell like one for $47, and then they go, well, if you got benefit from that, you could sign up for my $2,000 program or something of that nature. That can work really well. But I also think if you have met with a prospect and a need is big enough, like if I've met with someone and they're saying, we have no lead generation strategy, we need cold callers, we need to grow, I'm going to go for the top ticket item, because I know they've got a big enough need that they're probably not going to, what's the word? They're not going to hesitate in in going for something a bit bigger.
Or object to a price or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. I had an interesting one of my first mentors. He said, if the client is bleeding, you don't go and give them a Band-Aid. Like
I love that.
If they're bleeding, they need serious help.
I think I'm going to have to steal that one, that line, because I love that. It's like, yes, if they're bleeding, you don't want to just pop a Band-Aid over it. If they're bleeding bad enough, they're going to want the whole like medical care, your love and care, like a big bandage, whatever it might be. But it's a great, anecdote for, what we're talking about here, which is, and it also ties into price, I must say, because again, for listeners, a lot of people struggle with price, like, oh, what if someone can't afford me? Or what if they think I'm too expensive? That's probably the main line I get, what if I'm seen as too expensive? My belief is if they can see your value, like again, we talk about the person bleeding, if they're bleeding enough and they can see you as someone who can help them, they will pay whatever price they have to pay. So, when you're doing your pitch, you have to keep that in mind, that you've got to be demonstrating what are their pains and what's the value that you're going to deliver, and then they'll pay that premium price.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, the price, because I've just recently had a client who in their own business, they're challenging their own, perception of, they're thinking, what if they think this price is not going to work?
Yes.
And they're too scared to commit to this price. And instead of focusing on the price, I often quote Warren Buffett a lot. I've loved his quote on the price. And he said, price is what you pay, value is what you get.
Yes.
So you have to focus on the value. So the reason why we are, going from 47, let's say the product is $47, a digital product, to 2,000 is because you're now packaging this value. Because the value is that if they sold their business tomorrow, they can get this type of return on their investment.
Yes.
So thanks to you're actually showing them through that process. So we always have these kind of challenges with clients that we've come across, because we specialize in the marketing automation space, which is all about what happens when a lead comes in contact. It's about converting this lead. But then we always have to look at, do you actually have a right product? Is, that product market fit? You still have to have the right product that fits this need on the market that wants to buy it. So once we do that, we find, we're putting too many barriers just in communicating what the price of that product is. So we had a comparison where a product that we're selling was, let's say, $89.95 plus GST. And then if you look at the competitor, they have it as 90 plus GST. So why would you want somebody to make this decision and think about, well, how do I put GST on top of this price?
Yes. So true.
Yeah, there's too many calories that they have to burn to understand what they're going to be getting and paying for.
Yes. It's like, I always remember from uni, like the KISS statement, like keep it simple, stupid. They were always like, when it comes to marketing, you've just got to kiss it. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's always stuck with me. And I think it's very true with sales as well. And you're right about price. That's a whole, we could go into a whole conversation around price, but it's like with package options, with proposals, people love options. And quite often, they won't go for the first option that you give. They'll go for the second one because, human psychology, that's just what they seem to go for. So you've got to be careful how you position it. And,
and the number 7.
Yes. This is really interesting, actually, because, again, human psychology and all the NLP stuff, I love all this stuff and what makes people tick. I actually was talking to someone recently about this, how, yes, it used to be the whole $9.99, like that people would go for something with an ending in 9 because it seemed cheaper than $10, let's say. But apparently we've become so used to it as humans, like that's the price and that's what they're doing. They're trying to trick us, that 7 is now the number. So that's why you'll see a lot of salespeople are now using like 147 as a price or 197 or whatever it might be, because 7 seems to get better results. So
psychologically, maybe, I don't know. I always find
fascinating.
really it depends. We got to test and measure what works and what doesn't. Sometimes it's good to be, imperfect and just launch.
Yes.
Put a price. Get, if you can get 5, let's say 5 paying customers, then through that process, you would have learned how to sell, what their actual pain points are, what the questions they are, all this feedback you're getting from the market. And then you can improve the product, and then you can build a bigger product.
I agree. And I actually have a topic that I cover as part of like an online program that I do called Charging What You're Worth, which again ties into this whole conversation around, how am I too expensive, or, what do I charge? And I think you're right. You do have to do almost like a process of testing and measuring. I always say it's a great idea to research, your competitors and kind of benchmark what's the normal price in your industry. But then again, don't get too hung up on that, because look at the Promo Donna as an example. I gave the insight earlier into the fact that we are very different from your average telemarketing firm. So we're not really playing in the same space. We don't have a lot of competitors because we are, B2B, high quality focused, all of that. So I never would go to telemarketers and go, oh, what's their price? I'll stick the same. I've decided that we're quite premium, so that's how I'm going to price myself. But just like you said as well, it was a great tip to say, sometimes you need to just, do some research and the like, but then you just need to jump into it, test out the response in the marketplace, because that's what I certainly did, 10 years ago. I created packages, I kind of saw what resonated, and then that set my benchmark long term. So
exactly. Yeah. And I was just thinking around, like, in my experience through the sales journey, so my first experience that I said about the fitness, then it helped me as a young woman to sell myself to an employer. So I really picked up all those techniques, and I was trying to remember some of these sales trainings that I had along the way. And there was a big one, very popular one, that's based on the needs. What's the acronym? I forgot. Something with an S.
An S. There's so many different acronyms in
but
sales.
I went and I got a job as a recruitment consultant or something. And that was my first time going, okay, I am dealing in a B2B situation. And I was really lucky to have a great mentor, a lady that specialized in I think she was like a GM of sales in a publishing industry, which is, I guess, really cutthroat, I think, industry, selling books, physical books, publishing artists who you don't know they exist or they have a name yet. So very challenging. And so you learn all these cool techniques and the ways you would approach a sale. But the closing part was very interesting. So the closing is still something I think about. Okay, now it's time to close. Like internally, when I'm talking to someone, I'm thinking, okay, now I'm come to the sales call where I have to close this.
Yes.
How do you deal with properly closing a deal?
So look, I mentioned earlier that, if you're following a really great sales process, sometimes, and it's great when this happens, it kind of naturally just flows into a close anyway. As an example, if we're cold calling for a client and our main outcome that we want to achieve is an appointment with someone, sometimes they'll say, well, what's the next step? What do we do from here? And that's where we would go, oh, well, we would love to arrange an appointment between you and our director. And, we kind of, set it up from there. But so it really depends. Your question, I would say, depends on the outcome you're trying to achieve. So if it is just, appointment setting, or, a next step is like a coffee with them or something of that nature, I would say, firstly, don't ever be afraid to just ask for the outcome, because that's one thing that tends to happen is some people shy away from it because, again, they think they're going to sound too salesy. But I think you just have to kind of go for the jugular at times. And it's as simple as just saying, well, look, we've had a great discussion. It sounds like you're interested in finding out a bit more about our service. How about we book in a time to, have a coffee, or book in a time so I can give you a demo, whatever it might be. But if you're talking about the close when it comes to actually getting people to sign, so let's say you've done a sales meeting, you've written a proposal, something of that nature, and you want to sign them on the dotted line, there are a few techniques, as some quick tips I can give people that I like to use. The first is the assumptive close. Now, the assumptive close is, using assumptive language, to assume that they're going to go ahead with you. And it's almost like a psychological hack to get people thinking that they're already a client. An example of this is we do at the Promo Donna a workshop session with our clients as the first step when we work together. So quite often if I'm in a sales meeting, I will say something like, when we work together, when we start the campaign, who would you be bringing along to our workshop? And that gets them thinking, I'm already working with Ash, who would I include? So you can see how it works well in your favor to already get them, thinking about moving ahead with you. But the other technique, which I love using, is the now or never close. And this is a great technique for people that might think about like discounts, or, if someone does ask you for a reduced price. Someone once said to me, look, we'd love to go ahead, but the workshop fee is a little out of our budget at the moment, something, can you do something with that? So what I said was, look, I can perhaps give you a little bit of a reduction, but I would need you to lock in a date and time today. Like, we need to move forward today. Because if you don't take, advantage of that opportunity to close then and there, they might ask you for more discounts, or they might, stuff you around more. So you want to make sure the now or never is almost like, yes, I can offer that, but you need to sign today. So that's a good one for creating urgency.
Okay. So it's like I help you, you help me type of thing.
Exactly. It is. It's got to be about, give and take, doesn't it? Givers gain. I did a really great quote the other day. Who was it that said it? Oh, actually, this was a funny TikTok I made. So for listeners, one of the things that I love to do is I love to create entertaining sales advice, because let's face it, there's a lot of sales theory out there. It can get pretty boring. So I create a lot of TikToks and, fun stuff to, get people having fun with sales again, essentially. And I actually did a voiceover. So for those of you that don't know TikTok, you can do a lot of voiceovers, and this is where my acting sometimes comes into play. So I'm a big fan of like old Hollywood movies and things, and I love Gone with the Wind. So Gone with the Wind, Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara. And I did this scene where Rhett Butler is basically giving her this new bonnet, like a new hat. But he's saying to her, I expect something in return, right? Which is a little, jovial scene between them. But I said to people, my audience, I said, you've got to keep in mind that when you're selling, you've got to be like Rhett Butler, right? That you don't want to give away everything for free and not expect something in return. And it's probably the same when it comes to discounts. You don't want to give that away and not get something back in return, like a signed deal. So keep that in mind. Be like Rhett Butler.
It's a very good tip. Yeah, that's a good. I should really sign up to watch that movie this weekend too, because
there's always takeaways. I'm telling you right now in movies. And again, this is why I have so much fun with TikTok, because you can always do a spin in a sales sense. So
yeah, we had a lady specializes, Kylie Bartlett, specializes in social media. Yes. I don't know if you know Kylie, but yeah,
I've heard of her actually.
Yeah, she's been in the social media game for a very long time, since 2008. Yes. And she's very big in the corporate side, and she used to mentor people in social media. And now she runs a digital talent group where she helps students or graduates get into digital marketing, get into doing social media. So she helps small businesses with very good setups on Instagram, and then help students get trained up to actually learn good strategies and implement that live for a business.
That's
So
fantastic.
very cool idea. But yeah, she talked about TikTok. I'm like, I haven't even opened TikTok. And she's like, you must be on TikTok because it's the user generated space and what people are creating. The creativeness of this is amazing. What you can do, it's an amazing platform. So
To give you some funny insight, and a lot of people that know me know this, but I actually kind of stumbled into TikTok because of the lockdown. So last year when the lockdowns first hit, and don't ask me how I did this, but I convinced my husband to do some dances with me on TikTok, right? So we were having a bit of fun and everyone loved it, because TikTok essentially, for those of you, again, who haven't really used it, you can do dance trends. So you kind of learn a dance and then do it, to camera, and it's a lot of fun. It's funny. But then because I was using it for that reason, I stumbled across the fact that, like Kylie said, there's a lot of users on there for business purposes. And yes, you can use it to kind of make boring content fun again, which is what I thought, sales theory, this could be really good. And what is also fantastic, you can tell I'm a raving fan of TikTok, right? So I also create that content and repurpose it. So I use a lot of my TikToks on Reels on Instagram, which, that's blowing up now. And I even posted on LinkedIn. And this was an interesting one because we know LinkedIn, there's a lot of people on there that are like, very professional, don't do anything out of the box. But when I put my sales TikToks on there, again, it got so much traction because I think people were just used to same old. And now that there's someone on there doing, dances or voiceovers, they're like, oh, this is really interesting. So that's another tip for people, when it comes to say, yeah, get onto TikTok. Make whatever you're doing fun.
Great TikTok idea for somebody who is scared of doing cold calling.
Yes.
And get on the video and dance.
Well, I'm telling you right now, I mean, it's such a must, isn't it? The video, videography and getting into video, because even Instagram now, for those listening and you would probably know this, that they said we are no longer being seen as a photo or an image platform. We are video. So you are only going to really get engagement going forward if you're doing more videos. And a lot of people freaked out at this because they went, oh, I don't want to be on camera. But again, you don't have to necessarily just talk to camera like we're doing right now. You can make it fun. Do some funny TikToks, do some voiceovers. My voice when I do TikTok, it's not even my voice, because I do all these voiceover reels. So some people who are my followers don't even probably know that I'm Australian and this is my voice. They're probably like, oh, she does all the voiceovers. And it's a lot of fun.
It's fun. So can we use it really to get ready to hype us for cold calls?
Do you know what? What a great tip, because, a question I'm often asked is, well, how do I get into the right mental space when it comes to selling? Do whatever you can to, get into a peak state. So me and my call team, a lot of the things we do is, listen to music, go for a walk or a run before it, even meditating, whatever it is to get you in a great state that has you focused positively on the results you want to create. And you're right, I will sometimes do a heap of TikToks, kind of get me into this, really fun, happy mood. And then I'll get into, some call activity or something. So that's a great tip.
Yeah, someone said to me, do star jumps, do 5 star jumps before you get on the phone or before you do a presentation. Because I have to do a lot of these kind of big presentations, sometimes with big companies over Zoom. I do a lot of strategy sessions with them, and you could be in a room of 10, 15 people. You have to facilitate that. You have to make sure that you read that language, body language, listen to that, make sure you cover all the bases. So there's a lot to think about. So I tend to do, meditation, star jumps, go for a run, make sure I do a run in the morning, just get the energy out.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashleigh. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I think we've got so many awesome tips that we could probably repurpose on TikTok as well.
Amazing. I know. And I've I've loved it because, thanks so much again for having me. I think we've covered so many different kind of avenues or, areas of sales. But, if anyone listening does have any questions, I mean, obviously go and follow me on TikTok first and foremost. You'll get some more tips there. I think it's Ashleigh_Alsadie, and that's my handle on most platforms, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, reach out, because I'm always trying to get out as much sales advice, tips and tricks that I can. I'm a really big believer in sharing your passion, because you can help others. And in doing so, they might, and this is another great tip, by the way, for people about sales, that, there's so many that are scared to kind of give too much away because they think, oh, then they won't buy from me. But I think these days it is about sharing your expertise, because it positions you as that expert that they want to work with. So yeah, for anyone listening, if you want more advice, feel free to reach out on my platforms, or you can, reach out on at the Promo Donna, Ashleigh@promodonna.com.
I will include all of that in the show notes so that our listeners, and on our website at bumperleads.com, we'll publish this episode, and we'll also include all the links to your social media as well as the website. And if there is anything special that you want to offer to our listeners, feel free to do that. If there is anything that, I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Fabulous. And look, it'll probably be to do with my online sales program, which is the sales royalty program. And we actually have our next round coming up very soon, and we run rounds regularly. So for anyone that's kind of looking to take their selling to the next level, this could be perfect for you.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay. I'll include that. Make sure you send me the link to that. Is there a special link? Because that sounds like a very interesting solution for a lot of business owners. Awesome. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks for having me. And everyone, have fun selling.